She never told him her password. She wants that understood clearly right from the start, because it's the detail that confused everyone who heard her story afterward. The call came in about suspicious activity on her account, a familiar pattern by now. The caller was calm, professional, patient. He never once asked her to say her password out loud. Instead, near the end of the call, he said something almost casual. "We're going to send a verification code to your phone right now, just to confirm your identity before we can secure your account. Can you read that back to me when it arrives?" A moment later, her phone buzzed. A text from her actual bank's actual short code, the same one she'd received dozens of times before, for perfectly legitimate reasons. A 6-digit number. She read it back to him. 90 seconds later, he was inside her online banking account with full access, using nothing she had ever considered a password at all. That 6-digit code wasn't sent by the scammer. It was sent by her real bank's real security system, a system specifically designed to stop exactly what was about to happen. And the scammer didn't defeat that system with technology. He defeated it with a single, calmly worded sentence. Today, we're going to take that sentence apart completely, so you understand exactly how a genuine security feature becomes the precise tool used to bypass it. Can the one unbreakable rule that makes this entire scam impossible, regardless of how convincing the caller sounds, and regardless of how much they already seem to know about you. To understand this scam, you need to understand what that 6-digit code actually is, and more importantly, what it was built to prove. Banks and financial institutions use what's called two-factor authentication, often shortened to 2FA, as a second layer of security beyond your password. The idea is elegant. Even if someone steals or guesses your password, they still can't get into your account without also having physical possession of your phone, since the verification code is sent directly to that device. Think of it as a second lock on the same door. One key alone isn't enough anymore. Here's the critical detail almost nobody explains clearly enough. That code isn't a secret you're supposed to share with your bank when they call you. It's the opposite. It's proof your bank sends to you so that you can use it to confirm your own identity when you are the one logging in. Your bank already knows the code. They generated it. They have absolutely no reason to ever ask you to read it back to them over the phone. This is precisely the gap the scam is built to exploit. The scammer isn't trying to steal your password at all. Modern security has made passwords alone difficult to weaponize. Instead, he's attempting to log into your account himself, using information from a previous data breach. He needs exactly one more piece to get in, the verification code your bank's real system just sent to your real phone. When he asks you to read that back to confirm your identity, he isn't verifying anything about you at all. He's asking you to hand him the one piece of the puzzle that was specifically designed to keep him out. This exact mechanism is extensively documented by financial advisors and consumer protection researchers as one of the fastest-growing account takeover techniques currently in use. According to a 2026 published analysis from Retire with Ryan, a retirement planning resource, the scam typically begins with a text message asking, "Did you authorize this transaction? Reply yes or no." When the recipient replies no, the natural, responsible response, that reply often triggers an immediate follow-up call from someone claiming to represent the bank's fraud department. The caller frequently already possesses personal information such as the victim's name and partial account details, information increasingly available due to major data breaches over the past decade. The critical final step unfolds as follows. The caller explains that a verification code is being sent to secure the account and asks the victim to read it back. But the analysis is explicit about what's actually happening. The scammer did not send the code. Your financial institution did. The scammer is attempting to log into your account and needs that final verification code to gain access. Once you provide the code, you give them complete control. This pattern connects to broader data. The FBI reported that Americans 60 and older lost $7.75 billion to fraud in 2025, a 59% increase from the previous year. The FTC found that reports of $10,000 plus losses from impersonation fraud increased more than fourfold between 2020 and 2024. Verification code theft is increasingly the specific mechanism used to complete these schemes once initial trust has been established. Passwords alone have grown less useful to criminals because two-factor authentication has become so widespread. A stolen password often isn't enough anymore. This has pushed fraud operations toward social engineering the second factor. The weakest point isn't the system, but the human asked to bypass it. Recognizing that the target has shifted from your password to your code is why this scam has grown quickly, even as security has generally improved. A few important clarifications before moving forward. This does not mean two-factor authentication and verification codes are flawed or not worth using. They remain one of the most effective security tools available, stopping the overwhelming majority of unauthorized account access attempts. This scam doesn't defeat the technology. It manipulates a human being into voluntarily handing over what the technology protects. This also does not mean she was careless, unintelligent, or somehow less capable of protecting her own accounts. She had never shared a password, and she would have immediately recognized a request for her password as suspicious. The scam succeeded precisely because it never asked for anything that felt in the moment like a password. Reading back a code to confirm your identity sounds like a security process, not like handing over the keys to your account. And this doesn't mean every text asking you to reply yes or no or every call following one is automatically fraudulent. Real banks do occasionally use similar processes for legitimate purposes. The distinction is whether anyone, ever, asks you to read a code back to them over the phone. That single request is where legitimate banking procedure ends and fraud begins, and it's a line worth committing to memory. It is a line that never bends, regardless of context. The pattern behind this scam tends to unfold in a strikingly consistent sequence, regardless of which bank or institution is being impersonated. It typically opens with the same manufactured alert we discussed in our previous video, a text about an unrecognized transaction inviting a reply. That reply, whether yes or no, often confirms to the scammer that the phone number is active and monitored, triggering the next stage. The follow-up call establishes credibility quickly, frequently using personal details obtained from previous data breaches to sound legitimate from the very first sentence. The caller's tone throughout tends to remain calm and reassuring rather than aggressive, since aggression would trigger suspicion. The goal is to feel like a helpful ally walking you through a security process, not an adversary demanding something from you. The request for the verification code is almost always framed as the final, routine step in resolving the supposed problem. Just one more thing to confirm you're really you, arriving after enough rapport has been built that the request feels like a minor formality. Once the code is read back, the call often ends quickly, sometimes with a reassuring line like, "You're all set, your account is secure now." A final piece of misdirection meant to delay the moment you realize anything is wrong. Family members frequently discover this scam only when unauthorized transactions appear days later, since the victim genuinely believed they were participating in a legitimate process. This delayed discovery matters for a reason worth naming directly. The scam doesn't just steal access, it also steals time. A password theft or a stolen credit card number is often flagged by automated fraud detection within minutes or hours. A stolen verification code used to log in through what appears to be a normal session can avoid triggering alerts for much longer. Because from the bank's system's perspective, the correct credentials and second factor were both provided, exactly as the security process was designed. This is precisely why acting immediately upon realizing a code was shared matters so much, rather than waiting to see whether anything looks wrong first. Because this scam depends entirely on one specific request, the defense here is unusually simple and unusually absolute. First, and most important, never read a verification code to anyone, for any reason, under any circumstances, ever. Not to someone claiming to be your bank, tech support, or even a family member whose voice you don't personally recognize. This code exists specifically for you to use yourself when logging in. It has no legitimate purpose being spoken aloud to anyone. Second, understand that a legitimate institution will never ask for this, which means any request for it is complete proof of fraud. This single detail is sufficient on its own to end the conversation immediately, regardless of how official the interaction feels. Third, if you receive an unexpected verification code, treat it as an active warning that someone is attempting to access your account. Log into your account directly through your bank's official app to check for activity and consider changing your password immediately. Fourth, if you've already shared a code, act immediately. Contact your bank directly through the number on your card. Ask your bank to review your account, since damage from this scam can sometimes take days to become visible. Fifth, talk about this rule with your family. Establish never read back a code as a standing family rule to make refusal easier. It's worth practicing the refusal out loud. I don't share verification codes with anyone. I'll call the number on my card myself. You don't owe the caller an explanation. A legitimate representative will never push back against this boundary. That response alone often ends the call immediately, which is itself useful confirmation of who you were really talking to. Let's return to that 90-second call. The calm voice, the routine-sounding request, the 6 digits that changed everything. She never gave away a password. She never clicked a suspicious link. She did something that felt, at every single moment, like cooperating with her own bank's security process, because that's precisely what the entire interaction was engineered to feel like. The tragedy here isn't a lapse in judgment. It's a genuine security feature built to protect her, turned back against her, by someone who understood exactly how to make handing it over feel safe. Here's what changes the moment you understand this mechanism completely. The next time any call, text, or message asks you to read a code back to confirm anything, you already know the single fact that ends the entire scam before it can even get started. That code is yours and yours alone to use. Never to share, never to read aloud, regardless of who's asking or how reasonable the request sounds. That one piece of knowledge, once it's genuinely internalized, makes this specific fast-moving scam essentially powerless against you, no matter how sophisticated the setup, and no matter how much personal information the caller seems to already have about you. In our next video, we're going to look at what happens when this same manipulation moves from your bank account to your email, the phishing link that looks exactly like the real thing. Subscribe to stay with us as we keep building this understanding together.